And even in my personal life, same thing. I do the not how concept in my personal life. If there's anything I find myself not liking, the first thing now I say is, okay, who can I hire or partner with to get this off my plate? And life becomes so much more pleasant when you're only doing things that you really enjoy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Scale Smart, Grow Fast podcast. Scaling your business isn't always about doing more. It's about finding the right who to do the how. In this episode, Betsy Pepine, serial entrepreneur and founder of the award-winning Pepine Realty, shares how applying the who not how philosophy helped her build multiple thriving companies without burning out. With a Wharton MBA and endorsements from Barbara Corcoran and Dave Ramsey, Betsy brings powerful insight on building high-performance teams and letting go of control to scale faster and grow smarter. Betsy, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Wonderful. Happy to be here.
Well, Betsy, tell us a little bit more about your background, kind of what has gotten you to where you are today.
Well, my background is I'm a serial entrepreneur in all things real estate in North Central Florida. Started in real estate, then I became a broker, then I started the brokerage that had a solid foundation. I started looking at other ways I could add value to our current client and agent base. And so for me, that was adding services such as title, mortgage, property management, and then for the agents offering the school, the real estate school, so that because they need educated, they need continuing education and licensure. So it's been a wonderful way to just be a one-stop shop for everybody. So yeah, but I totally embrace the who not how concept. It's actually a book. It's one of my favorite books. Ben Hardy's in a mastermind with Strategic Coach, which is a program that a lot of us do. And he's involved in that with Dan Sullivan, and they espouse that a lot and truly believe in that. Wish I had come across that concept earlier, because I think I would have saved a lot of time in terms of accelerated growth and also headache, doing things that are not in my natural ability and really thrive in where I feel like my true abilities lie. So that's a little bit about me.
Now, a lot of people, I think, in a position like yours, and when they're thinking about starting these other ventures that are still real estate related, they might have a lot of doubts and say, there might be some voices saying, hey, just stick with what you know, scale that, don't go and start these other ventures. How did that work for you?
Well, I didn't start those right away. By the time I started the first one, which was title, I had been in the business 10 years. So I was very familiar with title. I mean, I'm not a title agent, but I felt like I knew enough to run a title company. And as long as I hired the right who's. So for that one, that's the only one. But for that one, I did partner with a company that specializes in bringing in-house title to brokerages and large teams.
Oh,
and
wow.
So that was great. That was a great model. I could watch and observe, but I felt like I had a great partner. All the other companies and the nonprofit. Well, actually, no, the mortgage was a franchise. I take that back. I forgot. So the mortgage, I started mortgage, my first go around, I started with a franchise, and they do provide you support. And I personally became an LO only because I wanted to really understand the business. And I felt like the only way I could do that is walk in their shoes, even if it was just for a little while, which I did. But then ended up 5 years after that closing that franchise because I realized I don't like working for people and having rules around those kinds of things. So kind of did that on my own. And then the other ones were, again, just a natural extension of what I already knew. And that's why I feel like I stay in the real estate space, because I feel so comfortable in it. I haven't ventured out into something totally foreign to me,
Well, these all sound like great complementary businesses. Now, earlier you mentioned you kind of wish you had heard about the Who Not How book and concept earlier.
Yeah.
What was some of the mindset shifts that helped you go from being the person doing everything to truly embracing Who Not How?
Masterminding with other people who embrace this concept. And because I feel like prior to it, I always had it in my head that I had to, one, do everything myself first and be an expert in it before I handed it off to somebody. That was a mindset I had. Like, I felt like I had to know it better than anybody I brought in, because how could I manage somebody if I don't know everything about what they do? That's why I got the MLO license. So I think that was one thing. And then also I had the mindset that me, others, we were supposed to be working on what we weren't good at to be this very well-rounded person versus no, focus on what truly is in your natural ability that you love to do and that you thrive in, and hire somebody who, because I guess I didn't realize there are people who love to do what I don't like to do. And so those were some of the mind shifts I had to wrap my head around and embrace before I implemented it. And then another one is paying people what they're worth. Because if you truly get great people in the seats you need, you're not hiring entry level people and training them, which was my model. And so understanding that it's an investment, not an expense. So those were I think the major mind shifts.
What would you say were some of the big pain points that you were experiencing prior to having that mindset shift that kind of helped facilitate, there's got to be a better way, I need to find some other solution?
I would say lack of growth or feeling stagnant. So at the beginning of a business, it kind of, for me, they've grown just naturally. But then at some point, they become stagnant or minded. And then being frustrated that I couldn't fix it or know how to get out of the slump. And then also just a frustration of me doing things that I didn't like to do.
Yeah.
And the longer I'm in the business, the less I want to do things that I'm either not good at or don't have a desire to do. And even in my personal life, same thing. I do the not how concept in my personal life. If there's anything I find myself not liking, the first thing now I say is, okay, who can I hire or partner with to get this off my plate? And life becomes so much more pleasant when you're only doing things that you really enjoy.
When you mentioned something earlier that was great, that a lot of people I think that are doing it all themselves don't realize, and that is there are people out there who enjoy and are good at those things that you don't enjoy or you're not good at, and you're actually creating opportunity for them by letting go of those things
and allowing them to thrive and not feeling like if I didn't like something, I would feel guilty.
Absolutely. When you're building these teams, what are some of the key traits you look for when choosing the right who to take those roles off of your plate?
The biggest one for me is the extent to which, well, one, they have to align with our core values. So that we screen everybody through that. We occasionally have to rehome people because there's a misalignment of core values. One of the key core values for me and our companies is a growth mindset. And so they won't stay for long if they don't have a growth mindset and want to learn and grow. And honestly, even in their personal lives, it's just, to me, if you want to learn and grow in your professional life, you also want to do that in your personal life. So it's going to be a mismatch for us if the person doesn't have a growth mindset. They don't always have both of these and be coachable and be able to take feedback in the manner it's meant to be, whereas it's constructive, it's helpful. How can we get better?
Yeah.
And how can I support you in getting better? But not being receptive to feedback and being very maybe narrow-minded in how things are done and take things very personally. That's a hard one to have somebody around long-term if that's how they're wired.
Absolutely. Many business owners, they kind of find themselves in a situation like you mentioned earlier of like hitting that stagnation point. Things kind of organically grew naturally over many years, but then eventually like market conditions or whatever, that you hit that ceiling. When does it make sense to bring on who maybe like executive assistant or something like that to free up more of the leader's time to do the higher level tasks?
I think that most people most business owners hire them when they need them, which is usually too late, because usually when you need them, you're at a breaking point and you're so frustrated. You're like, oh my gosh, I need help. Then you don't have time to train them properly. The business leader is so overwhelmed. So I try to anticipate the needs ahead of time. Every quarter, the leadership team meets and we look at the quarter ahead and the year ahead and anticipate what positions are going to change and be needed to take us to the next level so that we are prepared and we stay ahead of it instead of being reactive to it. So so the executive assistant, I would recommend hiring them before you anticipate the need. So you have the proper time and patience to train the person properly. The first hire that I made was an assistant about 2 years into opening the brokerage. And it was at that point of total frustration and overwhelm. I don't know that I would have called her an executive assistant, but an assistant just to help me stay afloat. And that was too late.
What were some of the first things that you started handing off to that assistant when you started there?
She started, and it's hard to remember, this a long time ago, 18 years ago, but she started with the routine paperwork. There's a ton of paperwork required in real estate transactions. And so she started doing that for me and my agents. I had 5 or 6 agents at the time. And then she did entries like you have to list, you list the property, you have to put it in MLS. You have a whole checklist of things that have to be done when you go on a listing appointment, when you take a listing, when you get a buyer under contract, when you get a listing under contract. So she started doing more of the transactional coordination piece for us and getting the listings up and looking good. Those were the things I handed off easily because that doesn't require a ton of training and knowledge. It's very easily learnable. So those are the tasks that I start her out with.
Awesome. Every day, your top performers are buried under emails, scheduling, and reporting. Work that doesn't move the needle. The result? Frustration, burnout, and worst of all, lost revenue. That's why we created the Executive's Guide to Scaling High Performers, a simple, battle-tested framework to eliminate busy work and unlock your team's full potential. Inside, you'll get the exact steps top executives use to retain A players, boost productivity, and free up their team for high-impact work. Stop losing revenue. Go to workergenics.com/growth-hub or check the episode notes to download the Executive's Guide to Scaling High Performers now. A lot of high performers and business leaders, kind of like you mentioned too, they stay stuck too long in maybe doing it all themselves or in outdated roles and routines that no longer serve their growth. Why would you say that is, and what advice would you give them to have a mindset shift to think differently and get out of being stuck?
I stayed in it because I felt pressure. I grew the business myself. And so I felt a lot of pressure that I put on myself that to see me at the beginning, it was even just simply like I let go of the buy side of the transaction. I let go of the listing side of the transaction and grew a team. And my mindset was, well, no, those customers called me. They want and expect to see me at every meeting. And that was a limiting belief of mine. As long as you train your folks well and you communicate why and in the process, it's people in general are fine with that. And then on the same side, even once I let go of all of that and had a team, releasing myself from the operational duties of the brokerage and hiring an operator and becoming the true visionary, I only did that 3 or 4 years ago because I feared my internal customers, my agents and my staff expected me to be in that role. And I feared the consequences of that. And to be honest with you, it was a very rocky couple of years. And I lost a lot of people because they didn't like the change. They wanted to work for me. They felt like they were no longer working for me. And I had to be okay with that. And it was incredibly difficult. I'm like emotionally difficult because some of these people had been with me a long time. I knew that if I wanted to fulfill my vision, I couldn't do it the way I had been operating. So it was worth the short-term pain. And it was painful. I don't want to minimize that. It was incredibly painful.
There's probably a lot of people listening who are at a similar point where their business has been successful and they want to go to that next level. They want to get an operator in place. Could you talk a little bit more about how you successfully navigated that very challenging transition?
I read a lot of books. So the great book called Traction, which really helps you with that role. And then I'm in a couple of masterminds. I've always been a big proponent of having mentors in my life, whether it's a formal relationship or informal relationship, people in all industries who have their businesses are where I want to go. And so I felt like I could see and learn from them and also had basically a informal board of directors that could help guide me through that process. So that's kind of how I overcame the fear of doing that because I saw my colleagues being successful at that and seeing what it did for their personal life and for their business. So that's kind of how I set myself up to do that. Otherwise, I don't think I would have had the courage to make that jump on my own. And then just the hiring process, I did choose to do that on my own. There are companies that hire operators. That's all they do is hire operators. So you could go that route. I chose to do it on my own, and that was going to be my plan B. I think it was my first hire that worked out. And I don't think that's actually common, but the first gentleman through the interview process is still with me and he's still my operator.
Well, that's incredible. What kind of tips or advice would you share to people that are about to be there that would give them that motivation to take that step and go through the challenging process of getting an operator? What kind of benefits have you seen after putting an operator in place in your life, professionally and personally, that you'd want to share with those considering this big step?
Well, I'm a lot happier, because I'm out of doing the tasks that were no longer bringing joy to me. Also, what I realized is people do it better than me. I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I didn't realize that there are different ways of doing things, and my way is not always the right way. And there's multiple ways of doing the things, and you learn from this person, and it's just a wonderful symbiotic relationship. So that was unexpected. Yeah, I think those are things that helped me. And then another exercise that I did, and I still do, is I do a time audit at least once a year, if not every 6 months. And, you just take a week and you go keep a pad of paper, you use your notes on your phone, and you write down in 15-minute increments what you're working on, what you're doing, and the extent to which you like it, find joy in it, and are good at it. And that's very telling in both your personal life and your work life. And then you just highest priority to lowest priority, and you start offboarding those tasks, and you just, I don't know, I found so much more joy because you get to a point where most things that you're doing, you're good at and you enjoy doing. And that's the way life should be.
That's great advice for people. It's something we often find ourselves in our business talking to our potential clients about. Make that list, do that time audit, because that's really going to be eye-opening and help people really see, yeah, there's a lot that you can take off your plate. And for most business owners, they may think, oh, I only need like a part-time assistant. But if they do that time audit, they realize they're probably working a lot more than 40 hours a week if they're really in their business hustling. And so there's easily 40 hours a week of things that are those low priorities that they could hand off to someone else to free them to have the high level operations and success that you've had. Mm-hmm. What kind of advice or things have you put in place in your businesses to help maintain the culture? Because that's one thing that's really important. Once you have that operator, mm-hmm. there might be a risk of like losing people. And you had some of that, but what long run kind of implementations have you had to have a successful workplace and have your businesses continue to grow with people?
That has been a big focus of mine since day one. And we do so many different things and we're constantly evolving. I think the culture starts with your core values and truly living them and making sure that everybody understands them, that they stand behind them, and that you demonstrate them. And so we do that. We have one of our core values is family. And to us, that means a lot of things, all inclusive. We are a family. We welcome your definition of family, including your biological family. We have pictures of your pets and your family on our walls so that when they come to work, they feel like their family is a part of what we do. And we're serving families in our day to day. So really being aligned and making sure everyone's aligned with your mission, your vision, and your core values. But then we do other things. Like recognition is huge. And being able to recognize people in the way they want to be recognized. There's a great book, The 5 Love Languages of the Workplace, which is wonderful because then you are appreciating and recognizing and making people feel seen in the ways that mean the most to them. We've implemented an app called Motivocity, which is a wonderful app that the company gives everybody. I think it's $3 to $5 a month. And it's a whole social platform, internal platform where others can shout out people for helping them out, doing a great job, exemplifying a core value. So the onus is not just on the owner to recognize people, but peer-to-peer recognition. And everybody can see who's been recognized, and you can give these monetary gifts and then they can cash them in for swag or for gift cards. We have a cheer crew that meets once a month and looks at the needs in our organization, who's going through a rough time, whose spouses are having surgeries, a grandparent just passed, different things. How do we recognize them and help them and support them? We do we volunteer and give back to the community on a monthly basis. We ask others in the organization, what are you passionate about, to make sure that we are giving back in a way that's meaningful to them. We also give everybody up to $1,000 donation to the charity of their choice because we want to be a part of what speaks to them. We do potlucks, birthday recognitions, things like that. We're constantly looking for ways to enhance our culture and making it a fun and a rewarding place to come to.
I love that. There's probably some people listening that maybe are not business owners and are getting that refreshed and ready to get that submitted to you to come work for you and your organization. That's awesome. Now, as we kind of start to wrap up here, for business owners that are listening who might feel stuck in their box, what are your top 3 tips to help them start moving forward today?
I would read the book. Well, there's a book called Scaling Up. There's a book called the ones that we talked about. I'm an incessant reader, but the 10X is Better Than 2X is another excellent book, also written by those same 2 people, Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, and then Who Not How. And then getting yourself into some mastermind groups with people whose businesses are further along than yours. that'll be instrumental. There's also groups like Vistage or EO, some of the big entrepreneurial groups. They're not cheap, but they are definitely, it's an investment and it's definitely worth it.
Betsy, thank you so much for sharing your tips and insights today. If people want to learn more about you or connect and have this conversation continue, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure. I have a website, betsypepine.com. I'm also on all the social channels with my name, Betsy Pepine, so they can reach out to me that way.
Awesome. For those of you listening, if you got value from this episode, do one quick thing. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future strategies to help you scale smarter. And do you know a business owner or a colleague who could use this? Share this episode with them. It could be exactly what they need right now. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, give us a quick star rating. It helps us reach more leaders just like you. And again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.